Texas is representative of a multicultural, multiracial, multi-faith, beautiful cornucopia of people. When we're looking at the grand scheme of Texas politics, people of color are the population of Texas. What this record is going to indicate is that there were 0 Texans against redistricting. I'm the first and only woman veteran to ever serve in the House of Representatives. We've stood at the front of that House floor and advocating for Muslims in Texas, celebrating Muslims in Texas, really standing tall and firm against Islamophobia. Faraz explained to me, he said, Josey, these men are from all over Texas. And they believe in you, they believe in our mission, and they're here.
Welcome to Behind the Veil, a video podcast powered by the national nonprofit media platform American Muslim Today. Today, we're joined by Texas Representative Josey Garcia, who serves District 124. A retired U.S. Air Force combat veteran and longtime San Antonio resident, Josey brings a deep understanding of the district's military roots and the challenges veterans face. After serving in Operation Iraqi Freedom and retiring from the Lackland Air Force Base in 2014, Josey co-founded the nonprofit Uniting America Outreach, leading grassroots efforts during crises like Snowvid 2021 and ongoing humanitarian missions to aid migrants at the U.S.-Mexico border. Drawing from personal experience in the foster care system, Josey is also a passionate advocate for child welfare reform and at-risk youth. Thank you for joining us today, Ms. Garcia.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
All right, let's get started. So, as you know, of course, President Trump has requested that Texas Governor Greg Abbott hold a special session to redraw congressional districts. Can you give us some insight on this? Will this help or hinder voters? And what are some of the District 124 voter issues?
Thank you so much for that question. You know, it's been an honor to be not only on the Congressional Redistricting Committee, but on the select committee to hear testimony across the state of Texas from constituents who, despite religious background, political background, economic, racial, the message is clear. You know, we have absolutely no appetite, no desire for mid-decade redistricting. We just did a redistricting in 2021. I was elected in 2022. So in 2021, some of my colleagues that are with me on the redistricting committee were a part of redrawing Texas lines. And so to see that, you know, just a couple of years later, we're going to do it again, at a time when we have witnessed biblical plagues and floods, you know, and no matter what your background is, no matter what religious faith that you're from, you can see the signs on the wall. And when we're talking about from COVID, which we could look at as a plague, when you talk about the migrant crisis at the border, that's another thing that you can look at that's biblical in nature, and it's, you know, bring me your wicked, your wretched masses yearning to be free. You know, you have these mass exoduses of people who are from all around the world. You know, a lot of people tend to think with Texas that when we're talking about the migrant crisis, that we're seeing immigrants that are coming from Southeast Asia, from Africa, you know, from many Muslim countries, you know, and that's why when we're talking about redistricting, people are confused. You know, we've experienced very, you know, spiritual disasters lately. And those of us who are touched spiritually or who believe, we see the writing on the wall, and we know that right now is a time for unification, not division. And that's what we're witnessing with this attempted redistricting, is a focus on separating us as Texans, separating us as communities of Texans. To be Texan doesn't mean that you're an Anglo-Saxon male with a cowboy hat and cowboy boots. Yes, that is part of our Texan culture. However, Texas is representative of a multicultural, multiracial, multi-faith, beautiful cornucopia of people. And that's what we have been seeing in all the major cities when we're talking about redistricting. We've been to Austin for a hearing. We've had 3 hearings. Now, keep in mind, we're having these hearings about redrawing 5 congressional districts in favor of the current administration without even a map. So imagine that. They're telling us we have to get public testimony about this redistricting, but we're not going to give you any of the information you need to let the community know what this redistricting will do. So what we do know is it's a power grab to be able to grab 5 more very conservative seats in districts that are primarily occupied by brown and black people. So when we're looking at the grand scheme of Texas politics, people of color are the population of Texas. When it comes to our elected representation, it is not reflected as such. We have 5 black members of the Texas Congress, and 4 of those seats, of the 4 seats that are being targeted, 3 of them are black seats. So when we're looking at what it means to be redrawing this district, it's already being told to us. It's being lined out what this is to us. This is modern day segregation, modern day redlining, modern day silencing of our minority voices. And Texas isn't standing for it. Austin, Houston, Arlington, Dallas, thousands of people showed up, packed the stadiums, packed the locations. Thousands of people have sent in written notice saying that they are against it. But let me tell you one thing that the public may not know. When they're coming to these hearings, generally when you come to a hearing, you have an option. You are testifying for or against. In this process, there is no for or against. It's on. So when you're coming to testify now, you are testifying on congressional redistricting, not for or against. So when the documentation is used for legal fights that are going to come from this, of course, because we have lawyers that are lined up through various caucuses throughout Texas that are watching what's happening, and it's very unconstitutional. It's against civil rights and it's against human rights. So we have to make sure we get everything on the record. What this record is going to indicate is that there were 0 Texans against redistricting, but thousands on redistricting. So words that small make a difference of the impact of the testimony.
And just before we move on here, what do you think will be the outcomes of this special session?
So we're on our 10th day of the special session. Texas special sessions are for 30 days. Part of this call is going to be the redistricting, of course. We have been notified that up until now, today, there has not been a proposed map of what these new congressional lines would look like. However, news has gotten to us today, and we have been able to see the proposed maps. That's pretty much all I can share right now, because we do our due diligence as legislators to make sure that we completely understand what they mean, and I want to be transparent with that. I'm a fairly new legislator. This is my 2nd term. I'm the first and only woman veteran to ever serve in the House of Representatives. And I'm not an attorney. A lot of my colleagues are attorneys. They're political professionals. I'm a regular, everyday American who has served my country, and representative of the voice of the people who are generally not represented. So in this process, I'm not a legal mind. So I have to count on my legal minds to translate everything to me so that I can effectively share what the real message is behind these new lines. And of course, we know what it is, but I like to give my due diligence and make sure I'm properly educating the community. I always come through my legislation from a community eye. A lot of my legislation is driven by community input, meaning if Maya, you want to send me an idea for legislation, send me a couple of sentences, and my team, including Clay Cortez, my legislative director, will put that together into legislation. And that's kind of what we're seeing. We're in a holding pattern right now, trying to figure out what's happening with these maps. But in the meantime, we're building a coalition of support. And that is so important. We need help. We need help from the business community. We need help from, other states. We were fortunate. I was part of a very small delegation of 7 Texas representatives that went to New Mexico yesterday to meet with the New Mexico governor, Governor Lujan Grisham, and she has been just phenomenal in letting us know that she knows what we're going through, and we have a friend in her. And that's something that you're going to be seeing from a lot of us Democratic reps, is we are going to be visiting other governors, other states, and warning them about what's coming, because Texas is ground zero for this racial gerrymandering redistricting. We are ground zero. Anything that happens in Texas is sure to catch fire and go out throughout the entire United States.
I would like to move on to another more recent event that happened in Texas. You have rallied support and donations for victims of the July 4th flood that happened in Central Texas,
Yes.
Which was one of the deadliest floods in U.S. history, killing 138 people, including the young girls from the summer camp. Do you believe the death toll is high due to the Trump administration cutting the funding for FEMA and emergency services?
I do believe that could have a lot to do with it, of course. Any cutting of emergency funds is very irresponsible. And I come from this lens of being a combat veteran who has served in various combat and humanitarian missions. And that's kind of how I've gotten my expertise in terms of being able to respond with Uniting America Outreach as early as 2020. I've served in Central America, in Africa, Cameroon, in Iraq, and Germany. And one thing that we know is fact is that when people are facing the most horrific times of their lives, the last thing that we need is political wrangling, political finger pointing, and unfortunately, that's what's occurred here. Make no mistake about it. Nobody could have predicted the biblical plague of a flood that just occurred. And again, when I use the term biblical, I use that in a sense. I consider myself a non-denominational spiritualist, meaning that I am a firm believer. I respect all religions. I have studied in many religions as well. And even in my tour in Iraq, it was very important for me to learn about the Muslim religion and to learn customs and courtesies and, terminologies, and I still use those terminologies till today. Like somebody called me this morning and was like, Josey, how long are we gonna be, down at the river at the Guadalupe? And I was like, inshallah, as long as the Lord wills it, or as long as Allah wills it. And I feel like those terms go hand in hand. I'm so blessed and so grateful to have this culmination of people that have been presented to me in this journey. I have not only supported and been a joint author and a co-author on several pieces of legislation for Muslims in the state of Texas, but my brothers, I call them my brothers because that's exactly what they are. They are my brothers. State Representative Dr. Suleiman Leilani and Dr. Salman Bojani. Not doctor, he's not a doctor, he's an attorney, but Salman Bojani. Both of them are representatives. Dr. Leilani represents the greater Houston area, and Dr. and Rep Bojani represents Euless and Arlington, Dallas area. And together, hand in hand, we've stood at the front of that House floor and advocating for Muslims in Texas, celebrating Muslims in Texas, really standing tall and firm against Islamophobia. And it's so important to me because I served during 9/11. I was active duty during 9/11. And it breaks my heart because I remember my Muslim American brothers and sisters that served in uniform with me that scrambled to change their names because they didn't want to be Muhammad. They didn't want to be Ahmed. They didn't want to, they didn't want to be judged purely off of their religion and their culture. And that really made an impact to me in a way that when we're witnessing such hurt and pain from not just a local community, but on a world stage, the last thing we need to do is put a target on our own brothers' backs. And this flood has brought us a collaboration of the Muslim community that I could never have imagined. I mentioned to you earlier when we were getting ready for this podcast, one of my team members from my nonprofit Uniting America Outreach, who I met when we were ground zero in Kerrville. His name is Ahmed. His name is Faraz Ahmed, and he's from Dallas. He has a business called Lone Star Legacy LLC. He's a construction contractor, but he saw what was happening in the Hill Country, took it upon himself to come and lend aid. And he told me, because this is what we do, Josey. We lend aid to the community that hurts. This is what our culture does. This is what we do. It's what we've done since we were children. And some folks didn't support me, but I'm here. He said, I believe in you and I believe in this mission. And he never left our side. He never left our side. Matter of fact, he's still down there in the Hill Country. It's been 2 weeks that he's been implanted in the Hill Country, lending aid, remediating homes, lending search, recovery, and response to the Hill Country. Our teams are instrumental in bringing people home to their families. And this was all by the grace of divine intervention and bringing people together at the right time, because Ahmed, I call him Ahmed, but Faraz told me, he said, Josey, I want you to meet some of my friends. And it was a day that we were out there all day. It was the Saturday after the floods, after July 6th. July 6th was the very first day we put boots on the ground there. I showed up with 15 people that believed in me. And today we have access to 2,000 volunteers and specialists, to include Faraz's heavy equipment and heavy machinery, skid steers, backhoes. But this one day was particularly hard. I was out in the field with our team and we were able to recover some folks and bring them home. And I went back to our headquarters where there was thousands of volunteers, thousands of people there to help, community. And Faraz came to me and he said, Josey, my guys are here to meet you. They want to meet you. They're here for you. And I was like, oh, thank you. I appreciate you guys for coming out. He's like, no, Josey, they're here for you. And I was like, okay, I'm coming. So I went over and Faraz introduced me to a group of about 20 young gentlemen, young Muslim men, and their imam. And the peace, just the moment was just so breathtaking because I was in chaos. And as a mother and as a woman and as a veteran, when you're in those hard situations and you're feeling all these intense emotions, almost like a rage and a sadness. And when I stood there in front of them, they were all wearing blue vests, and these blue vests said, Humanity First USA. I looked at them, they looked at me, and I just stood there and tears just started streaming down my face, uncontrollably, just tears. Faraz explained to me, he said, Josey, these men are from all over Texas. And they believe in you, they believe in our mission, and they're here. Imam did a silent prayer with me, and all of us, a big group, were standing there with an imam in Kerrville, where it's not very culturally diverse, if you know what I mean. And just the peace from that moment, it just gave me a reassurance that we're exactly where we need to be with the people that we need to be with. And I haven't stopped talking about that moment. I share with people every second I get, because there's something tangible that you feel when you're there doing the work on the ground, saving lives, rebuilding lives, giving hope to people who have no hope. But I'm proud to tell you that that wasn't the last day I saw those young men. They keep coming back. Some of them get in trouble because you know how it is. You know, you come from, culturally conservative places, and they're like, so we see, and not for nothing, but you young folks are kind of a thorn in the side of the traditional elders, right? Because you have this passion to go and, hey, if you're not going to support me, I'm going to do it anyway, but I'll come back and I'll tell you about it this evening, right? So we were able to have some wonderful conversations with his elders, who are very concerned, because they're like, hey, you're out there on your own doing this business. We've got business here that you need to be doing. And so that's kind of in a nutshell of how beautiful this operation is, because what people are not seeing, boots on the ground, is the devastation. And if you've been in any war-torn country, it's exactly that. I'm talking, you can see 30 feet high on trees that are 300 years old, where the flood lines were. The smell is indescribable sometimes. The devastation, the news doesn't give it justice. And Faraz is boots on the ground here, leading it as a Muslim man. And I can't be more proud of that.
Well, thank you so much for that testimony, Ms. Garcia.